climate consensus.
Yes.
And I'm fed up to here with the climate deniers. You? How about you? Stu, Jeffy? They deserve to be locked up and their heads lopped off.
The only people worse than climate deniers are cops.
Thank you. Thank you, Stu. From Brainerd University, which they always have some really good stuff. Is it true that 97% of climate scientists agree that climate change is real? Of course it is. In fact, I think that understates the fact.
Ask a real question.
Right. Let's take a look here and see what Prager has.
Also see what opponents don't want you to know the precise magnitude of climate change. Because if you did, you wouldn't be scared of climate change, you would be scared of losing the benefits of fossil fuels. For example, listen to how Secretary of State John Kerry manipulates the 97% of scientists line. 97% of climate scientists have confirmed that climate change is happening and that human activity is responsible, he said in a speech in Indonesia in 2014. Later, in the same speech, he claimed that scientists agreed that the world as we know it will change, and it will change dramatically for the worse. 97% of climate scientists never said any such thing. So what did the 97% actually say? It turns out nothing remotely resembling catastrophic climate change. One of the main studies justifying 97% was done by John Cook, a climate communications fellow for the Global Change Institute in Australia.
I love that institute.
Here's his own summary of the survey. Cook et al. Found that over 97% of papers surveyed endorsed the view that the Earth is warming up, and human emissions of greenhouse gases are the main cause.
Okay. So where does that go from there? And we have some updates on this, because it's an interesting thing, and now the website has been on the show before. He's good with this stuff. Let's see how this one winds up.
Main cause means over 50%. But the vast majority of papers don't say that human beings are the main cause of recent warming. In fact, one analysis showed that less than 2% of papers actually said that. Why did Cook get to 97% then? First, he added papers that explicitly said there was man-made warming, but didn't say how much. Then he added papers that didn't even say there was man-made warming, but he thought it was implied. A scientific researcher has a sacred obligation to accurately report his findings. Cook and researchers like him have failed us, as have the politicians and media figures who have blindly repeated the 97% claim to support their anti-fossil fuel goals. How can we protect ourselves against this kind of manipulation?
Good question.
Whenever someone tells you that scientists agree on something, ask two questions.
Okay.
What exactly do they agree on? And how did they prove it?
It's interesting because I think going to the studies is a worthwhile exercise to see this 97% number, because it's just an easy, like, we shut you down. And you know what? I don't have to make any good logical arguments. I don't need to understand this issue because 97% of scientists.
That's always what they do.
97%!
97%! Okay, consensus! 97% consensus!
Yeah, and I get that. I mean, it's an easy way to win an argument when you don't know anything about the topic that you're discussing.
And none of them do.
No, of course not. So, I mean, John Kerry does at some level. Most of the people you see quoting it on Facebook certainly don't. But, okay, John Kerry does. He knows it because he has a political interest. It helps him further his goals of distributing wealth, of many, many things. Global governance is another one of those things, and that's the exact word that they use in these climate coalitions when they're trying to manage these things. But bigger than that is the most simple way to understand how ridiculous this claim is the clip we played, I believe it was on CNN, of Dr. Roy Spencer on TV talking to an environmental activist. And I don't think we have the clip handy, but just to quickly recap, the climate activist says 97% of scientists agree. He said, and he is Dr. Roy Spencer, NASA award-winning scientist. His resume is insanely impressive. Okay, unquestionably great. But what he says is he's also known as one of the biggest climate deniers in the universe. He's the guy that Rush Limbaugh called the show's personal climatologist years and years ago. You love this guy. Dr. Spencer said, the biggest climate denialist in the world, supposedly, if you ask the question, the way they asked the question in the 97% study, I am in the 97%. He was saying that him, as the guy they call a huge global warming denier, the statement was so broad that even he was included in the 97%. This is a guy they call a denier, and is not even like, a guy who you'd say, I mean, he's a guy that Rush Limbaugh likes. So that's how, how evil John Kerry would think he is. But yet he, as a scientist, would even be in the 97%. So you see how ridiculous that point is. It basically just makes such a basic statement that that the Earth is warming and that man may be a cause of it. Even if you say most, 51% is. None of these things work out. None of their predictions work out if that's true. 51%.
Yeah, and James Hansen, who is a NASA climate scientist, and he's been saying since the 70s that climate change is disastrous and it's coming. And first of all, it was going to cause incredible cold. It was going to send us into another ice age. And then, of course, later on, it became warming, and the global warming was going to kill us. And so in the 1980s, he predicted that by 2010 to 2020, so right now, we're in that period, the Earth would warm 4 to 5 degrees Celsius, which is what, 6 or 7 degrees Fahrenheit? I mean, are you kidding me? We've warmed 0.9 degrees
In the last 100 years.
in 100 years. And so, I mean, so far off. Their predictions have been so ridiculous, and none of them have been right, that it's laughable.
Yeah, it really is. In fact, we actually looked at this particular testimony in depth actually it was an old episode of statistics, when we were doing statistics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a little old and it probably look really thin. It's going to make me do another documentary. But it's important to look back at it because of not only how wrong his predictions were, but what the scenarios were that would result in those predictions. It's insanity how far this guy missed. Watch.
In 1988, both Rihanna and global warming panic were in their infancy. Since then, both have piqued the interest of teenagers and scared the hell out of parents. But while Rihanna was still in the crib, Al Gore's favorite scientist, NASA's James Hansen, was in front of Congress, giving testimony that sparked the global warming movement. Hansen laid out 3 scenarios for what could happen with temperatures in the future. Scenario A, a worst-case scenario, where the world completely ignores his fantastic advice and keeps burning fossil fuels. Scenario B, a slightly less apocalyptic version of doom. And Scenario C, his best-case scenario with the least amount of warming. So, how accurate was he? Let's add the actual temperatures and see. As you can tell, there was less warming than even his best-case scenario. Hansen was wrong, spectacularly wrong, and he was wrong in the exact way that skeptical scientists said he would be wrong. But there's more to the story. Hansen's best case, Scenario C, was only supposed to happen if the entire world listened to it. People had to stop driving their SUVs, buy solar panels, and implement some sort of global version of cap and trade that achieved a drastic reduction in carbon dioxide emissions. Instead, the opposite happened. Emissions drastically increased even faster than Hansen predicted in any of his scenarios. I know all this is sort of mind-numbing, but think about it. If Hansen was right, the temperature should have been higher than his highest prediction. Instead, it was lower than his lowest. He literally could not have been more wrong than he was, yet here we are, listening to the exact same person who got it so wrong so long ago. In the future, maybe we'll stop hearing so much of Gore and Hansen and their blabbing, and instead, hopefully see a lot more of Rihanna.
Yep, you noticed.
Sadly, that has not been the case. I see almost nothing of Rihanna and way too much of Hansen and Gore.
I don't know. I think, yeah, it's probably true. You might not be hanging out in the right circles for this to happen.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Interesting. It's been so long since we did those only on GBTV at the very end. It's
Right.
I forgot how long ago that was. But I mean, think about that. Because he was saying, emissions will go up a little bit, and if they do, it'll be this temperature. But if everyone listens to me, it'll be a much lower temperature. It was lower that if everyone listened to him, except the emissions went up higher than his worst case scenario.
So how does he get away with it? How is it that no one calls him on it and says, are you kidding me? Did you see James Hansen's predictions from 1986?
Yeah.
They're so far off from what reality is. How do you give him any credibility?
I think it's partially, one of the ways they get out of it is whenever it's an older prediction, because you can't test a prediction they made last week, because you have to wait a little while.
Yeah.
As soon as you get to the point where it's been a while since they predicted it, they say it's an old prediction. That's what they do with the Hansen stuff. They're like, look, he got it generally right. Now, look, we've learned a lot since 1988 or 86. And, look, it's sure we now have a much better understanding, and our predictions we're making today are much more accurate, but he got it generally right.
No, he didn't. No,
their new thing is, we had a global warming pause. They floated the global warming pause for a while. That was one of the big issues. Yes,
now they try to deny the pause even happened.
Then they went and said, you know what, the pause didn't happen. The oceans were just eating more of the heat than we realized. And of course, that should show
200 degrees worth of heat.
Right. And that should show more faith. You should have more faith in us because we got that wrong before. But now we understand it, and we're telling you we understand it now, so you should believe us. Mm-hmm. Their new thing is, actually, it was warming the whole time. The temperatures weren't even going down. It was just El Nino. And now, 2016, by some estimates, of course, many others are not going to prove this out, but one data set shows it's going to be warmer than 1998 and 2016, and they're both El Nino years. So what we really found is that the Earth was warming the whole time. It was just, you have to compare only 1998 only to this year. That's their new pitch. What? Yeah. All the other years didn't matter. Only 1998 and 2016 the only years that matter.
They have not notified Montana about this global warming yet.
No, really.
The 4th of July, it was 52 degrees when I was giving my speech at the fireworks display.
Well,
52 on July 4th! And windy, it was so cold on the 4th of July. It was actually, during the day, it was maybe 80, and then this cold front moved in the afternoon, and it dropped like a rock, and was maybe 30 degrees colder, and it was so cold, it felt like the middle of winter.
Oh my God.
Somebody should notify Montana about this global warming phenomenon, because...
Well, I'm sure there's going to be pockets of instability around the globe during this.
You would think there wouldn't be, though. If there was this serious, catastrophic global warming, wouldn't that be pretty uniform by now? I mean, I know there's temperature changes, and you can't confuse weather with climate, yet they do it all the time. Every single time some heat wave hits. See, told ya. It's the hottest ever in the West right now. 117 degrees in June in Phoenix, Arizona. It's the hottest it's ever been.
And it's like when the don't confuse weather with climate argument is only present when it benefits them.
Exactly.
It's just the same thing with hey, government, get out of my medical decisions with abortion. You just implemented Obamacare. You don't get to say that anymore. No, you asked out of my uterus. I don't like this government intrusion into my life. The only time they care about government intrusion is that moment.
Yeah.
But they will still use it when it benefits them.
888-727 back more Pat Stu is inevitable, like global warming. It's gonna happen, and it's man caused, just like this show.